So I guess on a couple of these folks that were involved, two of them that you mentioned are Chris Mellon and Neil McCasland. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, so Neil McCasland has been in the news recently. He was just some background about him. He was like two-star general, lead scientist. He was like the leader of the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So just very senior, like one of the most senior scientific officials you can have in the military. And so Wright-Patterson has long been suspected to be related to UAP crash retrieval programs and reverse engineering, et cetera. And Neil McCasland has been missing for several months. So there's, if you've heard of the missing scientist stuff that's been going on in the news with a bunch of missing scientists, uh, McCasland was one of them. Um, so I guess just uh, you know, to what can you share anything about to what extent uh, either you or Tom or anyone else in your organization like met with him, or to what extent he was willing to share information, or any anything along that lines?
Well, I know Tom and McCaslin had an interesting relationship, but McCaslin never shared anything with Tom that was remotely classified. I think McCaslin was sort of functioning more as a guide, for Tom. Tom wanted to write these secret machines, novels, and he also wanted to. We have a series of a nonfiction called Secret Machines, also God, Man, and War. And what we really needed was a little direction, and what he thought. And so he would give Tom that direction. Tom wouldn't share that information with anybody. I mean, he kept it to himself, and which is fine. And so his disappearance, he's been retired. We don't know much about his personal life, and I don't know. Supposedly, he left the house, without his phone, without his watch. He took a gun with him. Um, if he had, mental health concerns, I don't know, but that's a possibility. I think anything beyond that is really speculation. They haven't found him, so that's pretty unusual in the sense that they haven't found him. I know there were remote viewers that have been out there looking for him. They haven't come up with anything, so don't really know. Don't really know. And there's a whole slew of scientists supposedly that have been died in the last 10 years, and everybody's trying to pull this together into a conspiracy. But honestly, I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of scientists in the United States with top secret clearances, and that are associated with either national laboratories or the military or the intelligence agencies and what have you. And you know, if 30 scientists out of them, die, that's not a conspiracy. That's just normal as far as I'm concerned. I think of the 30 they were talking about, I know at least, seven or eight that died of natural causes or causes that they've had diseases and what have you that, and they were old and all this kind of stuff. There was obviously some ones that are just absolutely incredible. The missing, I can't remember her name, but she just disappeared off of a trail. How the hell does that happen? And that, I don't know. I just don't know. But I don't. I think it's way too soon to be making any kind of judgments on, what this all means in the end. You guys are probably too young, but about 20 years ago, there was also a case of missing microbiologists, cell biologists that were working on things, and they just kept dying, and nobody could figure out what the hell the story was. But when somebody did the stats, looked at the demographics, they showed, well, actually, this is sort of a semi-normal pattern. You know what I mean? You're going to find that many people doing that. But, it's like statistics in general. You put them together, you can interpret it any damn way you want to interpret it. So, so I just caution people to be careful about that.
Right. And I guess part of the reason I'm asking is that it's like been in the news.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Sort of these, not all conspiracy theories are wrong, but this is certainly a conspiracy theory.
Well, you never know. I mean, you never know. I mean, I know the Trump administration is looking at it, but I don't know whether it'll go anywhere.
Yeah, and I guess along these lines, it is also part of the folklore of this topic that people that are exposed to these programs and whistleblowers are often faced with reprisals. Have you been exposed to any like people that have been silenced or had reprisals in any way? Maybe not to this level of being disappeared, but like any sort of that spectrum.
Well, no, I mean, I think, you know, the program, what they call quote unquote the legacy program that they saw in the age of disclosure. I was shocked, by the way, when they showed that. I was just stunned that they actually would show that. That's something I don't want to comment on. All right. But when you have a program like this, it is probably has the highest classification level you can probably get, which is a waivered, unacknowledged special access program. And those are very highly bigoted. They're restricted, and they have security protocols that border on the obscene as far as, if you're working in one of those programs. I ran a few of those myself, nothing to do with UAP or anything like that. And I ran many, many more SAPs and, wavered XAPs, special access programs in my career. So, I mean, I'm sort of used to this. And but they exist in their own little world, and the security protocols sometimes they're shared, particularly if two government agencies, two intelligence agencies, or a military agency and an intelligence agency are working on a particular topic. The security protocols sometimes are shared. If the Atomic Energy Commission is involved, is like they intimated in Age of Disclosure, uh, the security protocols with the Atomic Energy Commission are just, I mean, incredible. I mean, just really tight, very, very tight. And so, have people been harassed? Uh, yeah, probably. And have they been intimidated? Yeah, probably. If the security protocols allow them to do that, is it legal? It may be legal. Put it this way, it is definitely not ethical or moral, in my opinion. And I'm just talking on a strictly hypothetical basis here. I mean, there might be a legality to that. That these types of programs, have a very severe protocol where if you get too close to spilling the beans or something like that, they can pretty much, pick you up, take you in, and read the riot act to you. But I don't know about anybody being killed. I mean, purposely killed. There may have been in the early days. It was the Wild West back in the 40s and 50s. Let me tell you. I mean, even in the 60s. And it wasn't until 75 with the church committee that you really found any kind of uh, a look at the intelligence services and what CIA was doing back in the day. My God. I mean, I look at that. I'm shocked by it because I mean, when I worked there, I mean, I had lawyers, right next to me. I mean, I couldn't do anything but talking to the lawyer first, and and making sure that we weren't getting involved in anything that wasn't the least bit legal. And those filters are very, very prominent now in the intelligence community. That said, when you get into these types of programs, particularly ones that are run by the executive branch, um, that do not necessarily have a requirement to report to Congress. In other words, if the president decides he doesn't report to Congress and he has an intelligence service working for him, say like CIA, anything he says with the CIA is privileged, and Congress isn't allowed to basically, call him in on it and what have you. Congress can even tell CIA, for instance, there's the Intelligence Committee, Senate and the House. Well, if CIA goes there and says we're working on this program, and both committees say, well, we don't approve of that, the CIA can choose to do it, well, with the president's permission and National Security Council permission without Congress's approval. Now, Congress won't give them money for it, But if there's money in the executive branch, to fund those programs, that can be done. That really is a huge legal argument that's going right now between Congress and the executive branch. And it's all about the unitary executive theory. You might have heard of this, where the president has the power, to do things, implement laws without Congress or what have you. And Congress takes the exact opposite turn and says, no, the courts have not ruled on this. And people don't want to take it to the courts because they're afraid of what might happen. So there's always been an understanding between the president and Congress, I think. And I think with dealing with UAP, that I think what the deal, and I don't know this for sure, but I think what the deal has been is that the president will notify some members of the Gang of Eight, maybe one or two, and say, we have this program going on, and this is what it's about. But we can't tell you any of the big details, and we don't want you asking, nor do we want you discussing it. And I think that's been going on for the past 80 plus years. So I think there are people in Congress that do know about it, but they're generally very, very senior, usually one or two in the Gang of Eight. Maybe it's the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee might know, or they're been briefed on it. The briefings that have been going on in Congress now are low level in the sense that junior congressmen, they may have security clearances up to secret, but they're not read into these programs. I mean, what they're being shown is videos, and they're being shown instances where UAP has shown itself. And if you've seen these videos, and I have many of them, they could be quite scary because what the hell is that? You're looking at it, and what the hell is it, and how does that work? And I think a lot of the congressmen were shocked. I think most of them were shocked by it, and that's why you have this push. But they're generally junior, right? You don't have very, very many senior people in the Senate and Congress pushing this topic. There may be a reason for that. I don't know. But also, I think one of the main reasons why this is not being pushed, and I'm rambling a little bit here, and I apologize, but I think this is important to get out, is that this phenomenon, UAP and the phenomena, the attaching phenomena, the woo stuff, the abductions, the contactee stuff, that stuff does not impinge on most people's lives. I mean, I don't know how many people we're speaking to here, but if it's a dozen or so people, I mean, you can ask a dozen, maybe it's impinged on one or two of the people. Well, actually, it's UFO Society, so maybe more, maybe half. But if you go out writ large, you take 1,000 people and you ask them how many of you have had a UFO experience, UAP appearance. You're lucky if you get 10, right? So it's not something that appears all the time and it becomes a part of your life on an everyday basis. You got other things you're doing, and so I think that's the reason why there's not enough public support for Congress to push this any further than it has been.